Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Sessions, one issue that's been gone over a lot today, which I'm going to return to, is the question of the rule of law and whether you would honor it. Many times an administration will not agree with a particular statute, even though the language and intent of Congress are crystal clear. And in addition, many times the individual who has been appointed to enforce the laws doesn't personally agree with a law that's on the books. Yet as Attorney General, it will be your job, as you have already indicated, to enforce and defend the laws as written by the legislative branch, regardless of your own personal philosophical views. And I know that you've done this. Let me talk about a few examples. Even though you support the death penalty, you agreed to drop the death sentence of a defendant when you determined that the aggravating circumstances standard in the statute for applying the death penalty didn't apply to their particular convicted double murder. Even though you had supported a Republican governor when you were Alabama's Attorney General, when this governor violated the ethics laws, you agreed and argued to uphold his conviction. Again, when you were the Alabama Attorney General, you declined to prosecute a former Alabama insurance commissioner who was a Democrat, even though you received criticism for this. You didn't prosecute because you believed there wasn't actually a criminal violation. You also prosecuted the Alabama Republican Party vice chairman, even though you're from the same party. So it seems to me that your history shows that you can make those kinds of judgment calls and do what the job demands. I already know the answer to this question because I've seen it in your record and because I've known and worked with you for a number of years, but I ask anyway, again, if you're confirmed, will you commit to enforce and defend the laws and the Constitution of the United States, regardless of your personal and philosophical views on the matter?
I will, Senator Crapo, and I would note on the death penalty case, my appellate lawyers gave me a little briefing of the cases that were coming up, and they said, we'll be defending this death case, but we are probably going to lose. I said, why are we going to lose? And they said it didn't have the aggravating factor you needed to carry out a death penalty. And I said, we can't go before the Supreme Court and argue for a death penalty if it doesn't meet the standard for a death penalty, to which the lawyer said, well, the local people are really fired up about it, and we usually just do what they want and let the court decide. And I said, well, no, we shouldn't do that. Well, that turned out to be an easy decision to make that day, but when I was running for the United States Senate, maybe a year later, it became one of the biggest ads and biggest attacks on me that I had failed to defend a jury conviction for murder in this county. But you just have to do you have to do the right thing. And some of these other cases reflect the same thing. Indeed, this insurance commissioner, the case was taken by the governor's team to the state DA who prosecuted the case and convicted the man, but it was reversed on appeal by finding by the Court of Appeals that he didn't commit a crime, just like we had concluded originally. So these are tough calls. Sometimes I've not always made them right, but I do believe you have to put the law first, Senator Crapo, and I have tried to do that, tried to teach my people that, and none of us are perfect, but we should strive to get it right every time.
Well, thank you, Jeff, and I knew that answer, as I said, before I asked the question. But one of the other senators here today said that it's important to get your record out, and I think it is important to get your record correctly understood. And I think that there, unfortunately, is too much inaccurate reporting about your record. Another instance in that context, as you know, I am the Republican sponsor of the Violence Against Women Act that we passed recently here in the U.S. Senate and the Congress. You've been criticized for not supporting that act, but I want to give you a chance again to correct the record and to fully state the record. If I understand it right, you voted for the original and supported the reauthorization of that act at least twice, and your objection to the act that did pass this last time, the reauthorization, was not at all based on the question of whether to have the statute in place. It was instead based on an issue with regard to jurisdiction on tribal lands and other related matters. Could you again restate your position on the issue?
Well, thank you, Senator Crapo. And, you know, I came here as a lawyer, tried to conduct myself properly and consider what some might consider legal technicalities, but I think are pretty important. The bill, as I understood it, was controversial primarily because of this situation in which a non-tribal member could be tried in a tribal court, which apparently, I think it's fair to say, is not constructed in a way that's consistent with the Constitution, and that we have never done this before. And so 8 of the 9 Republicans on the Judiciary Committee concluded that this was not appropriate. So by voting against that version of the Violence Against Women's Act, if it had failed, we would not then, I'm confident, not had a bill. We would have been able to pass the Violence Against Women Act that didn't have that provision in it. So that's sort of where we were in the political process. And one of the bad things about modern American politics is if you take that position, you're not portrayed as being wrong on the tribal issue. You're portrayed as being against a bill that would protect women from violence. And I think that is unfair, and thank you for giving me the chance to respond.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that, and I can again confirm because, as I said, I am the Republican sponsor of that bill, and that description you have given is exactly of one of just a couple issues which were being seriously litigated, if you will, here, and which we were trying to resolve. And those of you who took that position, again, were not in any way objecting to the act. You had multiple times before supported it, and you were trying to help resolve one specific issue on the bill. And so I just want to clarify that with you, and again, get the record straight about where you stand on the issue. I see my time's pretty much gone, Mr. Chairman. I won't go to my next question.
I call on Senator Blumenthal.